The dining table was long, too long. It was designed for power. Crystal glasses, silver cutlery, white orchids in the center, and me, sitting at the far end like an afterthought. My husband Victor raised his glass. "To success," he said. Everyone clapped. His mother smiled proudly. His business partners nodded. Even my sister-in-law smirked. I sat quietly because the success he was celebrating was built on my inheritance. But no one at that table knew. 30 years ago, when Victor's startup was drowning in debt, I had signed something, a silent investment contract, under my maiden name. No credit, no spotlight, no applause, just belief. Back at the table, Victor suddenly looked at me. "Oh, and let's not forget," he laughed, "even the most useless people can serve a purpose." Laughter exploded across the room. I felt the heat rise to my face. His mother leaned forward. "Clara, dear, you should be grateful Victor kept you around. Not many men would." Grateful for humiliation, for silence, for being tolerated. Victor stood and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You've never understood business anyway. Leave the thinking to us." I looked at the company logo projected on the wall behind him, the same company I quietly saved 30 years ago. I smiled because that night I decided something. I would never defend myself again. I would reveal myself, but not yet. I was 22 when I married Victor. He was ambitious, charismatic, dream-filled. He had nothing. I had everything. My father owned private shares in industrial logistics and biotech investments. When he passed away suddenly, he left everything to me. But there was a condition. Never give power to someone who hasn't earned loyalty. I ignored that warning. Victor's startup failed twice in 2 years. Banks refused him. Investors laughed. The night he cried in our small apartment, I made a call. I invested half my inheritance under a shell corporation. Victor thought a mysterious angel investor believed in him. He spent 30 years praising that unknown backer. He never realized he was sleeping beside her. Back to the dinner night. After the guests left, Victor approached me. "You embarrassed me by staying silent." I raised an eyebrow. "How?" "You looked cold." I laughed softly. "After 30 years of silence, you finally noticed?" He frowned. "You're overreacting." I stood. "No, Victor, I've been underreacting for 3 decades. He walked away. Because arrogant men don't argue, they dismiss. The next morning, I made 3 phone calls. The board meeting was scheduled for Friday. Victor had no idea. Friday arrived. Victor walked into the glass boardroom confidently. The directors were seated, lawyers present, financial officers serious, and me at the head of the table. He froze. "What is this?" The lead attorney spoke calmly. "As of this quarter, majority shares have been consolidated." Victor laughed. "By who?" I slid the documents across the table. He read the name, my maiden name. His hands trembled. This is you?" Yes. Silence swallowed the room. I was the angel investor. The CFO nodded. For 30 years. Victor staggered back into his chair. "You lied to me." "No," I said softly. "I protected you." The attorney continued. "Due to long-term strategic restructuring, the board has voted to remove Mr. Victor Hayes as CEO." The room felt electric. Victor stood up violently. "You can't do this!" I looked him in the eyes. "You said I never understood business." Victor stormed out of the boardroom that day. But power doesn't shout. It signs papers. Within 48 hours, His executive access was revoked. His company credit lines were frozen. His assistant was reassigned. Security clearance removed. The media announcement was simple. Founder transitions to advisory role during strategic restructuring. Polite, professional, devastating. At home, he exploded. "You destroyed me!" I was sitting by the window, reading calmly. "No," I replied. "I removed you." He stared at me like a stranger. "You planned this?" "For 30 years. His face lost color. He whispered something that almost sounded like fear. "Why didn't you tell me?" I looked at him carefully. "Would you have treated me differently?" Silence. That silence was my answer. There was one more secret, one Victor never noticed. Our daughter, Elena. He loved showing her off when she was little, but as she grew older and chose finance instead of fashion, he lost interest. "She's too serious," he would say. "She should marry well." He never knew who trained her. Every evening for 15 years, Elena sat beside me learning corporate law, shareholder structures, negotiation psychology, and silence as strategy. She once asked me, "Why don't you ever fight back?" I told her, "Because loud victories are temporary, quiet ones are permanent." Elena didn't smile much growing up. She observed, she calculated, she remembered. And when she turned 30, she became chief financial strategist of the very company her father believed he built alone. Victor thought humiliation was the worst part. It wasn't. 3 weeks after losing his title, he discovered something else. His brother, Mark, the man who toasted him at the dinner, had sold his private shares to Elena years ago. Victor confronted Mark. "You betrayed me?" Mark shrugged. "You never listened to Clara. I did." Victor felt something unfamiliar. Isolation. He returned home one evening drunk. "You turned my own blood against me." I stood. "No, your arrogance did." He laughed bitterly. "You think you've won?" I walked toward him slowly. This was never a game. Scandal came unexpectedly. An investigative journalist uncovered old financial filings. The mysterious original investor. My maiden name. Headlines exploded. Was the real founder hidden in plain sight? The woman behind the empire. Reporters gathered outside our house. Victor panicked. "You need to deny this." I looked at him. For 30 years, I denied myself. Now, I scheduled an interview. The studio lights were bright. The host leaned forward. "Mrs. Clara Hayes, why stay silent for 3 decades?" I answered calmly. "Because sometimes you don't build something for credit. You build it for proof." "Proof of what?" "That loyalty is more powerful than ego." The clip went viral. Women began writing to me. Investors called me visionary. Young entrepreneurs quoted me. Victor watched it alone. For the first time in his life, he was invisible. But there was still unfinished business. During restructuring audits, Alina uncovered something serious. Victor had diverted company funds into a private offshore account during expansion years. Not illegal, but unethical and undisclosed. Board members were furious. A legal hearing was scheduled. Not criminal, corporate accountability. Victor sat at the opposite side of the table, gray, thinner, smaller. He looked at me once. "After everything, you're still doing this?" I answered softly, "I'm finishing it." The chairman spoke. "Mr. Hayes, do you admit to undisclosed financial transfers?" Victor hesitated. For the first time in his life, he looked unsure. And then he looked at Alina, his daughter. She didn't blink. He lowered his eyes. Yes. Silence filled the room. Authority shifted completely. Victor no longer walked like a founder. He walked like a man searching for something he couldn't name. The legal hearing didn't destroy him financially. It destroyed something deeper: reputation. The board publicly announced ethical violations and removed his advisory privileges. For the first time in 32 years, his name was no longer attached to the company's future vision. He tried applying for executive roles elsewhere. Doors stayed politely closed. Industry remembers power. It also remembers scandal. At home, the mansion felt empty. Staff reduced, invitations stopped, phones silent. One evening, he sat across from me in the living room. No one calls anymore. I folded a document calmly. That's what happens when relationships were built on status. He looked at me carefully. Did you ever love me? That question came 32 years too late. I loved who you were before applause changed you. He nodded slowly, and for the first time, he didn't argue. Victor no longer walked like a founder. He walked like a man searching for something he couldn't name. The legal hearing didn't destroy him financially. It destroyed something deeper: reputation. The board publicly announced ethical violations and removed his advisory privileges. For the first time in 32 years, his name was no longer attached to the company's future vision. He tried applying for executive roles elsewhere. Doors stayed politely closed. Industry remembers power. It also remembers scandal. At home, the mansion felt empty. Staff reduced. Invitations stopped. Phones silent. One evening, he sat across from me in the living room. No one calls anymore. I folded a document calmly. That's what happens when relationships were built on status. He looked at me carefully. Did you ever love me? That question came 32 years too late. I loved who you were before applause changed you. He nodded slowly, and for the first time, he didn't argue. 3 months later, the company prepared for its 35th anniversary gala. Major investors, government officials, global partners. The board insisted that I give the keynote speech. I refused twice, accepted on the third request. Victor received no formal invitation, but as co-founder on record, he could attend. The night arrived. The ballroom looked almost identical to the dinner 32 years ago. Long table, crystal glasses, white orchids. History has a strange sense of humor. Elena stood beside me in a deep navy gown. Are you nervous? She asked. No, I said softly. I'm finished being nervous. Victor entered quietly. No applause, no recognition. Just a man in a black suit walking past people who once stood when he entered rooms. He saw the stage banner. 35 years of vision, and below it, my name. Not as wife, not as supporter, but as founder and strategic architect. He stopped walking. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. The chairman stepped to the podium. Tonight, we honor the mind that built this empire from silence. Applause filled the hall. Not loud, respectful, lasting. I walked to the stage. Lights softened, microphone steady. I looked across the room and found Victor, standing in the back, alone. I was 22 when I invested in an idea, I began. I believed in potential, in partnership, in loyalty. The room listened. For 32 years, I allowed someone else to be the face of what I built. Pause. Not because I was weak, but because I wanted to see what power does to character. Complete silence. Power doesn't change you. It reveals you. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I didn't humiliate, because the truth doesn't need drama. I stand here tonight not as a victim, but as proof. Proof that silence can be strategy. proof that loyalty should never be mistaken for dependence. And then I said the final line. When they said I was nothing, I was building everything. The applause this time was louder. Not explosive, earned.